Coaching through the Bible, chapter 3, Avraham believing passionately. In preparing for this episode on Abraham, I went to sort of look at a lot of literature, articles, books, videos as well, on concepts and thinkers, concepts in entrepreneurship and leadership, because in my mind, Avram sort of fits the bill on that. And when we think about entrepreneurship in the history of the world, and you look at some of the literature written about biblical entrepreneurship or lessons learned, Avram's right at the top. His particular brand of entrepreneurship is spiritual in nature, but his success is it's hard to even calculate how many people his life work impacted. And the billions upon billions upon billions of the three Abrahamic faiths, certainly the Jewish people, certainly the Muslim nation, and certainly those who are believers in Christianity. Billions upon billions upon billions. But when we think about Avram in that way, we have to think about sort of maybe some of the key core principles that are gleaned from Avram, is this idea of believing passionately. In coaching, when we talk to people, we work with people, either as individuals or teams, or in particularly the case that right now in fundraising on this particular moment, we talk a lot about belief, the belief in the why of the organization, the belief in the why of the campaign, and we don't move until there is that belief from those who are leading on the organizational side, or are in a company or in a team. Until they believe, there's very little to really work with. That passion and believing passionately, all the more so. Passion breaks through walls. Passion overcomes all kinds of hurdles and differences of opinion. Passion for a cause can be a great unifier. And so getting people to believe passionately about really anything in life is so vital to success, and so vital to living a happy life and an accomplished life and a valuable life and meaningful life. And so when we look at Avram, we have to think about him in the context first of where he's coming from. Because when we sort of think about him believing passionately, we want to see that play out in his life multiple times, and they do, multiple examples in the literature, in the Bible itself, in the Torah itself, so you get those examples. But first I want to bring you back to a source that I quoted a couple of years ago and that I picked up about 20 years ago. It was a book called The Gifts of the Jews by Thomas Cahill, wherein he describes Avram going, that first move, those two words, Lech Lecha, and Avram went, as revolutionary. And they really are, because he picks up and he leaves what was comfortable, the comfort zone, the idea that we talked about last week, to become uncomfortable and to go out into a sort of a wilderness, in a desert, spiritual and a physical desert in a lot of cases, to change the world, to appreciate the millennia in which he's living and what the world looks like. Nobody goes west the way he does. No one does what he did. No one goes on that kind of a journey. If you had to poll the different nations of the earth at the time and what they might say to him, you might get some very sort of understandable and expected answers from them. Had you gone to the early Greeks, as Cahill writes, the Greeks might have told him the story of Prometheus, whose quest for the fire of the gods ended in personal disaster. They would have said, do not overreach, come to resignation. In India, they might have said to him, do not set yourself the task of accomplishing something in time, which is only the dominion of suffering. In China, at the time, they might have told him that the great thing is to abolish time by escaping from the law of change. All of the different places on every continent, in every society, Cahill writes, Avram would have been given the same advice that the wise men, as diverse as Heraclitus, Lao Tzu, and Siddhartha would one day give their followers. Do not journey, but sit. Compose yourself by the river of life. Meditate on its ceaseless and meaningless flow until you absorb the pattern and have come to peace with the great wheel. and with your own death and the death of all things, an incorruptible sphere. That's the world in which Avram lives. It's not a world of innovation, of creativity. It's certainly not a world that's looking for a spiritual change. And yet Abraham lives and exists in that spiritual space, and he has what he believes to be a very powerful mission to accomplish. And so he doesn't listen to those doubters, and he doesn't conform to what they're telling him to conform to. Everything about him changes because he believes passionately in his mission. Simon Sinek, very well-known speaker and presenter, talks about the idea of the why. Know your why, and he deals that concentric circle idea of many people knowing the what they do, and the how, or how they do it, but very few people focus in on the why, and the why is perhaps the most important part. Abraham knows the why, believes passionately in the why, and very much wants to spread the why. And so when the Rambam, Maimonides, the beginning of the laws of Deot and Hilchot Deot in the Book of Knowledge, talks about the concept of idol worship developing in the universe until Abraham, until Avram jumps into the picture, you hear the description that he brings, that Abraham is not a youngster when he comes to this moment. He's lived life. He has gone through all kinds of iterations of his being. He has worked. He's probably already has married at this point. He has family that he is close to, and that he is around when he is going through this monumental shift in his own mind, and then thereby, by extension, ultimately, revolutionary shift in the world. He is living in this space that I saw described in entrepreneurial thinking that's called the OODA loop. The OODA loop, which is a term that's used to describe by fighter pilots. OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. It's the ability to sort of analyze and review a set of circumstances and situations and act faster than the people that are around you, and to move more quickly than they are to the point at which you're able to succeed. But maybe beyond that is that Avram is not just resting on his laurels that he's come up with this idea, but he obviously, clearly, because he believes in the why and he believes passionately in spreading that message, he goes out and you would call, missionizes to the world. But more than that, he's practicing. When he goes out, as Maimonides describes, and he goes and he discusses in the public domain, and he debates the ideas that he has developed, that he has come to, that he understands with respect to the world, he's practicing the art of his preaching, of his teaching, of his leadership, of his entrepreneurship. And so when God does ultimately call to him, he's certainly ready for that call in that moment. But he is working on it. He is going out to do it, because how could he not? There is no other way for him than to do it that way. And so he calls out to the public, and he tells them, this is right, and no offense, but what you're doing is wrong. All of you are wrong, and I am right. That's really hard to believe, let alone to say out loud and stand against the rest of the world. And as we learn in Midrashic literature, the story that Avram is thrown into the pit of fire, the Kivshan Ha'esh, by Nimrod, by the leader of that world, and he's willing to go to his death and to his demise because of his beliefs, you get the extent by which he believes passionately and is unwilling to yield on this point. He easily could have. He could have walked away at that moment. It appears to have happened well before God appears to him and speaks to him. He could easily have gone back and said, it was an episode, for a moment there I lost my mind and I was speaking and preaching an idea that's not true, and he would have lived, and he would have lived a decent, happy life wherever he was. But he's willing to go to the fire, and instead of being burned to death, he is strengthened. His mettle is strengthened in that fire, in that flame. His passion is only greater when he comes out of it, and certainly he's well known at that point as the person who survived the fire. But it goes deeper than that, really. And as you see the episodes unfold in front of you, his believing passionately and his desire to share this with the world only grows. And so just two examples from this week's Torah reading. Example one is the story in Egypt when Abraham and Avram and Sarah and he and his wife and the people coming with him. The Bible describes, the Torah talks about the nefesh asher asu b'charan, the lives that they made, the souls that they made in that place in Haran, the place where he was coming from. So it's described in the commentaries, most famously, that the idea that those people are people that he and his wife had converted, that had brought close by preaching this idea of monotheism, this belief in God that he was sharing with the world. But more importantly, that right after that story happens and he is arriving in the land, there's a famine and he has to go to Egypt. And there's sort of this odd moment where he turns to his wife and he says, "Please tell them that you're my sister, so that they should give me gifts." It's a very strange sort of idea. The verse says exactly, "Tell them that you're my sister, lema'ani tavli ba'avurech," that they should do good by me. And the commentaries say good by me means they should give me gifts. And it's a very difficult idea that he should benefit in this way financially from putting Sarah's life, in danger in that moment. So there's a beautiful comment that I saw in a work called the Be'er Yosef. It's written by Rabbi Yosef Salant. And in there he says you have to understand it differently. He's not saying to her, I want to get financial wealth out of this. And he's not pulling this trick really to put her in danger. He's discussing it this way, and he's asking her to say this so that they would have an opportunity to converse with the Egyptians, so that he could have the opportunity to begin a discussion with them about what he believes. And he believed so deeply in it and in his ability to talk about it that he could convince them also. But had he come and said that this is my wife, they would have killed him immediately. He never would have had the chance. Avram is not interested in the financial and material wealth that's going to come out of this situation. He's focused in on the spiritual opportunity to spread the ideas and his passion with more people. And so he says to her, say this, because if you say this, then they'll begin a conversation with me, a discussion with me, even perhaps a negotiation with me, and I'll have the opportunity to begin a conversation with them, and I'll have the opportunity to speak to them about God and about faith and about our version of faith in the world, about monotheism and the belief in God and the way we believe. And I believe firmly in myself and have the confidence in myself that I will be able to move them to believe in the way that I believe and to call out to God in the way that I call out to God. And so it's not a person who's coming to Egypt and seeking financial wealth, and it's not a person who's coming to Egypt, which is really the epitome of the exact opposite of who he is and where he's coming from, but rather he's coming there to preach and to bring the spiritual entrepreneurship, this whole idea of believing passionately in God, into a place that is really antithetical to what he believes and how he believes. And so it's Avram putting that into the world, bringing that into the world, sharing that with another group of people. And at each and every moment, if you look at it that way, he is looking and he is seeking opportunities where he may be able to share his gift to the world, which is this belief in God. And so what you see in these different sources, this idea that Avram is not typical, that he is revolutionary, that he does operate with a different set of principles than everybody else, that he is entrepreneurial in his nature and he is seeking these opportunities, that he doesn't listen to the world that's around him, but rather believes in what he believes in his idea, and he believes passionately. Because believing passionately in the idea allows the person to overcome self-doubt. It allows a person to have what Adam Grant talks about, the idea in his book about originals, the idea that he can have idea doubt, that he can think about his ideas, that he can test his ideas, that he can run them by other people, and he can run them by people that he's close to. his wife, his family members, some of the friends he picks up along the way, and he can refine and really crystallize and clarify the pitch to everybody about what his spiritual entrepreneurship goal is and what believing passionately about God can be. And the last idea and last source that I want to share with you is an additional moment in the story that we hear about, which is in the War of the Four and the Five Kings. After that war is over, and Avram wins that war, it's clear that he is not your average typical person in the universe. And everybody understands that he is on some level supernatural. He's different. He stands out. He is king of the world on some level. They gather effectively to sort of crown him and anoint him the king, right? In those moments when the king of Sodom offers him gifts, it's appropriate that he should be offered gifts for having won the war, for having vanquished the enemy, for having shown that it's possible to win these kinds of battles with a small army because you believe what you believe and you operate the way you operate. What's amazing is that in that moment, he says no. And he explains that he raises up his hands to God in heaven and earth, and that he won't take anything from the kings that are being offered. You have to ask yourself, why? Why is it? He deserves it. It belongs to him. He absolutely should get rewarded for what he did. Valiant in his effort and in his fighting, victorious. To the victor go the spoils. And he says no. And so Malbim, parenthetically my favorite commentary, Malbim, Meir Leibush ben Yechiel Mechel, who was a rabbi in the 19th century, there's a beautiful commentary on many, many works in the Bible, in the Tanakh. It says, when you appreciate what Avram is, what Abraham is, and where he's coming from, and what he is seeking in every moment, you can appreciate why he says no. First of all, you can appreciate that just the victory itself for him is confirming, and the victory for himself in that moment is so powerful and meaningful to him because it simply confirms what he believes and who it is that he believes in and why it is that he believes. But beyond that, he appreciates the idea that others are paying attention. He appreciates the idea that others are looking at him and wondering about him and thinking about what this person is and who this person is, and that they've never seen anybody like him before. And he appreciates that if he takes the gifts, then he taints the gift that he could give. And that if he accepts monetary or financial gain, which he deserves, then he blurs what just happened. And he diminishes the opportunity to spread the message further to the great leaders of the world, leaders of large nations at the time, kings. And so he says, no, I raise my hand to God. He puts God's name out there in front of them. He doesn't hide it. He doesn't, put it under a cap. He doesn't put it away. He believes passionately. His why comes through in a grand way, in a great moment in front of all these people. I will not take away from this victory that is a victory for God and a victory for my belief system, but more importantly, a victory for God, by taking from you anything, even the smallest item, even a shoelace, even a string, nothing, because if I take anything, I diminish. And so Abraham is wholly focused on his belief system, in believing passionately, believing deeply in his ideas, and sharing those ideas with others. By virtue of operating in that manner, he brings to bear another key principle about being sort of entrepreneurial in nature, which is that by virtue of having an incredible level of integrity, this I heard in a talk by a professor at Stanford University Business School, Amy Wilkinson, incredible integrity gives a person the ability to create incredible opportunity. Coming out of this moment, Avram has incredible space to operate, incredible space to impact more people and more people and more people, and to really bring God into the world in an amazing way. And since that is really his reason for being, and he's made that the purpose of his life, then he will seek every moment and every opportunity, and he will look at it from the vantage point of how does this enhance and increase God's presence in the world. And nothing will cause him to stray from that. That's incredibly powerful. It's incredibly rigid in terms of a way to approach it, but that's how one gets to success, by being wholly focused, by being incredibly passionate, by not letting obstacles get in the way. There are many obstacles along the way, many issues that come up along the way that could have held him back. Nothing stands in his way, because that why factor for him, his belief, and his belief in that set of ideas passionately, is overwhelming. It smooths the surface of any of those bumps in the road. It allows him to keep his eyes focused on the road ahead and the opportunities that may present themselves before him in the future. And so Avram is an entrepreneur in a spiritual manner. He is an original when it comes to thinkers. He is a different kind of person. He does come from the other side of the river, right? He is Ivri. He is from the other. He's different from everybody else. And he will not allow anything to get in the way of sharing that passion with other people. So the coaching concept here this week is the idea of seeking in our lives things that we believe in passionately and going for them. And figuring out how to bring them into the world and how to share them with others, figuring how not to let obstacles get in our way, figuring out how not to have comfort get in the way of our opportunity to share growth with other people, figuring out ways to continue to enhance our integrity so that we can create more opportunity, and figuring out a way to keep sharing and sharing and sharing, because that well of passion continues to offer and to offer and to offer each and every time. So believe passionately, seek those things out, look for them in our own lives, in your lives, and go from there. We'll see you next week on Coaching Through the Bible.